So what are we going to cover today? Today is going to be fairly simple, and it's mostly discussion. So I hope people will participate. First, we're going to talk about the reactions to the experiment that we ran last Thursday on trying to get ChatGPT to write an essay on why I write. And we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in general. Then I'm going to describe the assignment that you have for this Thursday, which is your first reasonably significant writing assignment, which accounts for a fairly big part of your overall grade, and is to write a first draft of your own essay titled "Why I Write." And so we'll talk about that towards the end of class. So first off, as I said, we had that experiment, and I was really thrilled with the way it went. So thank you. I know it might have been nerve-wracking for some, and some are like, "What's going on here?" I really didn't know how it would come out. I think it came out incredibly well, and I appreciate all of you participating in that and making it happen. First off, we're going to talk about ChatGPT. Now, one thing I want to make clear, and I hope it's clear to everyone, this is not a class about ChatGPT. And I'm not trying to teach you how to write. I like the smile, thank you. I like the, I'm not trying to teach you how to not write. I'm not trying to teach you how to use AI and ChatGPT to do all your work for you. But it's a very important development when it comes to writing and to education. And I think it would be wrong to ignore it. This is a writing class, and in many ways, this may be the most significant development in writing since the printing press. We don't know. So to say we're going to ignore it, to me, would be wrong. So I have a number of specific questions about the exercise and about the observations that you guys posted. And I really recommend going on and taking a look at what many of your peers posted and how I responded to a number of them. First off, I've given everyone feedback on their post, either individually or in the discussion board. So take a look at what has been posted subsequently, including my reactions to it. So just stepping back, you had the weekend to think about it. Maybe you spoke to some people about it. What stands out from this experiment that we ran last Thursday?
I'd say I thought it was kind of similar to what I said in my discussion. It was unexpected. I didn't expect the outcome that came from it. But I think it was interesting to actually use the AI software, and I think it could be useful maybe for like finding ideas or even helping you write in some way. But I think that using it to just write a full essay kind of just defeats the purpose of writing it itself.
So who else feels that way, that to use it the way we did defeats the purpose of writing? There's a hand. Kelsey, how do you generally feel about it?
Really isn't anything to add. Like she said, it's, kind of defeats the purpose. Like you have to write something, you have to put your perspective and you want to or a little bit of yourself and your thoughts into your writing, and an AI can't.
And it sort of cuts that off, doesn't it? It's funny. I was saying to a few of the people who were here early, if I were a professor who really didn't want you to use AI, maybe this is the exact way to do it. say you're allowed to use it and have an exercise like we did, because the majority of students in this class said, I really don't want to use this. So, I'm going to tell those professors who want to prohibit it. What you need to do is say, you're allowed to use it, because if you tell them it's prohibited, people will use it. This way, everyone says no. No, I mean, truthfully, the exercise was a little bit loaded that way. It's not a good, the way that we went through it is definitely not a good way to use it. And to use it where you only have a half hour to do it. And you don't have very much guidance, and you haven't had much experience with it. It's kind of destined to spit out some crap. And that's that, you know, so I hadn't really thought about that before. I did think about it afterwards, because you've got significant camps of professors and people in general about AI and ChatGPT, and there's a camp that says this is horrible, we must stamp it out. To permit it in a class would be horrific. It's wrong. It's a misuse of education and of writing. And then there's a camp that says, oh, this is awesome. This is the most important development for humankind since the wheel. And we've got to train people in how to use it. I don't know where I fit between those two. So somewhere in the middle. I'm definitely not, and it's got to be used. But for those who believe it's got to be used, they would probably criticize what we did on Thursday, because they'd say that was all wrong. You didn't introduce it well. You didn't talk about prompts. You almost encouraged them to try out cheating, which doesn't work. And that would all be accurate. And I think that accounts in part for Kelsey and Kyle, your reaction, although it's a very fair reaction that this can't be used. And a part of that is, I know the perception among students, many students, is this is simply a thing for cheating, that ChatGPT was invented to help students cheat. And that's not true. That is not the purpose of ChatGPT. Welcome. So it has many other purposes. A side effect of it, when it was first released, November of last year, less than a year ago. Think about that. It was released less than a year ago. A side effect of it is all of a sudden it seemed like it could be used for cheating. And that spread like wildfire. It was the fastest growing app ever in history. And so the perception got out there that this is an app for cheating, like Chegg, which I think is crap, and is for cheating. And there are ways to go out and buy essays, and that's just for plagiarism and cheating. This wasn't designed for that, but a side effect of it is that it can be used for cheating. So all of a sudden the perspective got out, oh, this is an app for cheating and it has to be prohibited, but that's not what it is. Yet the exercise that we did on Thursday in some respects was almost encouraging you to use it in that way. Not entirely, because hopefully you had, I know most of you had, actually read the essay, Joan Didion's essay, Why I Write, and you knew things that were coming back that were wrong. And that was one of the points of the exercise. So we've got a couple of reactions of, it was a little surprising. It helped demonstrate how it ought not to be used, because it's going to come up with bad things and it's going to impede your ability to think about it. Did anyone have an experience of feeling like, wow, I didn't know what this was and now I do, and this is exciting and interesting and something I've got to explore some more?
I mean, I said in my discussion box was like, it's still very much like permitted, it's like still in like infancy stage, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where like you definitely tell it has like potential to like be like huge, you know, be actually very much world changing, I guess. But at its current state, I mean, you guys see what Congress can't even do it correctly, so it's not really.
Yeah. No, but you raise a very important point. To evaluate it based on its current stage of development is wrong in some respects, because the thing, for instance, on generating fake quotes and hallucinating, they're definitely working on that. I mean, it ought not to do that. And we'll talk in a little while about how exactly does it do what it does and why does it do that. So for instance, about, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, a New York Times columnist worked with, I think it was Microsoft Bing, which uses ChatGPT. And it was when it was first released, and he got on and started having a conversation with Bing. And he tried to make it very personal. And ultimately, and it kept going. And ultimately, Bing started convincing him he ought to leave his wife and that he really loved Bing. And it clearly is not the intent of the internet and of AI to do this, nor of Microsoft or ChatGPT. Well, he published an article about that. It was really fascinating and scary, very, very scary. And so right away there were reactions of, see, this is what this AI does. It's awful. Well, it's part of the testing, effectively. And soon after that, Microsoft put in guardrails, put up protections that wouldn't happen. Part of it is asking the AI to pretend it thinks something that is very destructive. Pretend you are this, and then it goes down that path. And also, Microsoft cut off conversations after a certain point. That conversation with Bing went on for over an hour, I think. I don't think you're allowed to have a conversation of over an hour with Bing at this point, because it does. The more you do that, and the more you torture it, the more it'll go with that. Now, in some respects, it's an experiment. Of course, you know, the really bad part of this is, think about a person who is interacting with it, who has mental health issues, who is trying to deal with it and thinks they're talking to a person. You know, awful. And it's spitting back at that person the negative thoughts that they are projecting into it. So really bad. But my point in raising this is, that's something that they're working on. Now, a scary thing about that is, we're all human guinea pigs. What you did in class on Thursday is now out there, completely available to ChatGPT. It is now using it and what you molded with respect to this essay is now part of the database. And so, and there are significant privacy concerns about this. And there are significant concerns about what is it being told, where is it getting its information, and biases that come out from that. So lots of big concerns about that. But what Bruno points out is absolutely true. What we're evaluating it on today is not what it will be. So we do need to recognize that. Okay, so let's now talk about specifically the process of generating the essay, what you actually did. So we'll actually pull up some of the essays and talk about them, what was actually written. But what prompts did you use? Who started with copying the whole prompt and putting it into ChatGPT? Did anyone do that? You can do that. It's possible. Okay, no one did that. So what did you do? No, what did you do instead?
Which is the question that was asked of us, which is like, write an essay with some John Ridley. And then we inserted into the ChatGPT, and that's essentially what it gave us. Okay,
so when you say you said what was asked of you, you didn't actually copy it, but you sort of paraphrased it and put it in, or did you actually copy the whole prompt and put it in?
Yeah, I essentially just copied the whole prompt.
Okay.
Yeah, you just copied the question there, and then the ChatGPT, and like, okay, this is what it gave us. You know?
Okay, and how was that first thing that it generated?
It was I would say it was like 80% accurate. The main problem with it is I have some few like grammatical errors, mainly because of the fact that it would be like one-on sentences. Like, for example, it would say a quote that wasn't really quoted in the actual essay. So instead of it would sound similar, if not essentially paraphrasing something she said, but it wouldn't be inherently exactly what she said.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking about two things. One, you said grammatical errors. It's probably not grammatical errors, but rather because it ought not to generate grammatical errors, but more stylistic things that you would think aren't the way you would write it.
Like one sentence would be contextualizing something else, then another sentence would be contextualizing something else, you know.
So it's just going off in different tangents. It doesn't flow well.
Yeah, it doesn't like really flow too well. Like, for the most part, it's mostly coherent. It's mostly, you know, it mostly flows well in what you're going to say, but there'll be like a few sentences that kind of go out of place in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's using a quote that sounds convincing as if it's in there, but it's not actually.
Yeah, it sounds similar to something that's said, but it's not exactly what it said.
Yeah. Did others have similar experience at first blush with it?
Gave us what we asked for, and we would have to really briefly.
A lot of people experience this at making up quotes. So let's use this as an opportunity to talk about what this thing actually does. Does anyone know how it does, what is it doing? Yeah.
So from what I can understand with ChatGPT, essentially it takes like, you know, a bunch of different sources and kind of combines them together and kind of, you know, takes out what is mostly comparing out of those like essays or out of those articles, you know, and then try to, you know, basically make a summary of what you're asking.
Yeah. So Brenda was saying it takes things from various sources and patches them together. Actually, it's a little different from that. That is actually giving it more credit for almost thought than it's actually doing. It is what's referred to as a large language model. It has had millions, billions of words put into it from all sorts of sources. And it is like a giant autocorrect, or do you guys have on your Gmail that when you start typing something, it'll complete the sentence? That's what it is. All it is doing is predicting the next word. So it's looking at your words and predicting how would something that said, Joan Didion, why I write, be answered with a question mark. You know, how Joan Didion, why I write, question mark. And it says, well, here are some words that have been used in answering that, somewhere in its, you know, massive number of words that is available to it. And it goes and finds the word that's found next. And maybe it's found somewhere that those words that are in the made up quote go next to each other. And maybe at some time they've had quotation marks next to them. It's not thinking. It's simply finding the most likely words, phrases, sentences, ultimately, paragraphs. Now it has a lot built in that's going to have good grammar and it's going to use what appears like logic, but it's not doing that. It's simply going and finding words, and that's why it's particularly not good at math. If math is not words. I mean, if you ask it a basic math question, it can do that, but it doesn't think about 500. It doesn't count. It doesn't actually add. And if you give it I just saw a great example of someone put into it the question, if it takes an hour for 3 towels to dry on a clothesline, how long would it take for 6 towels to dry on a clothesline? And actually it just comes up with double the number, which it isn't. It's the exact same number. There's logic involved in that. It can't do that. So you're combining math and logic. It does it very poorly. But it does have the appearance of logic, and it makes up things that, for the most part, work. Not always. Not always. It's coming up with words that don't act, ought not to go. Will that be fixed? I think so. I mean, I think in a couple of years we'll have solved the hallucination thing. But it's definitely right now is simply coming up with what sound like good words that go with it. It's a great bullshitter. It's like the extreme bullshitter. It sounds extremely convincing, but it's just making it up. Sometimes, not always. Now, recognize you worked with ChatGPT 3.5, most likely all of you did, which is the free version of it. And it's continually being developed. First it was ChatGPT 3, then it was 3.5. Right now there's a ChatGPT 4, which you have to pay for. I think it's like $20 a month. It's a little better than this. And originally ChatGPT 3 had no access to the internet. It was simply words that had been put into its own proprietary database. And that database had only used information up till like 2021. So it couldn't tell you stuff that had happened in the last couple of years if you asked about it. If you asked about, I don't know, January 6th or whatever, it couldn't tell you about it, or something that had happened currently. It's been changing, it's been evolving. And so that's specific to ChatGPT. Microsoft Bing uses ChatGPT as its base. Google Bard, I hope I'm getting this right, is a whole different database. Then I mentioned Claude. One thing that's interesting about Microsoft Bing, it uses ChatGPT, but it also does go out to the internet, and it does tell you where it got some of its information. So that's helpful for that. And maybe later in this class, we'll experiment with some of the other forms of ChatGPT. Let's talk about the work involved in doing this. Was it, you're shaking your head no? What did you think about the amount of work involved?
She just.
Not much work.
Yeah.
Yeah, just type in a prompt and something comes back. But if you did that, how would you have done on the essay? Terrible, terrible. But how about with a little more work? Yeah, proofreading and checking the quotes.
Yeah.
You know.
Probably better.
Yeah. So relative to you, let's say you had to sit down and write that essay without ChatGPT.
I think I'd do better on my own without using it.
Yeah, I've no doubt you would have. That I agree. Although it would have taken you more time, probably. But one of the things, and this gets at the cheating, though, is it's much easier to generate a mediocre essay that was at least pass. Hey, morning. So in just one prompt, you're going to get something. That's probably a failing essay. With another 10 minutes of working with it, we'll talk about how that's done. You can get a passing essay much quicker. So so with some work using AI, you can generate a passing essay or passing project, or whatever it is, as long as it's not math. Don't do this for math. Although you can use specialized math AI programs for math. So if to you, the purpose of college is to get a degree and get out, maybe this is for you. If you're the person who said, look, if I didn't have to show up for class and I could just pay my fee and get my degree, that's exactly what I would do. I personally do not think that's the purpose of college. It's up to me in this class to prove to you that's not the purpose of this class. The purpose of this class is to help you improve your critical thinking and writing abilities in ways that are going to help you in life. And I hope all your classes do something like that. But it is absolutely up to us to do that. And this AI is reinforcing that. Is saying we've got to prove our value and that it is worth actually learning and doing the exercises and having essays that matter. So I hope we're doing that, but it is an open question. But if that's all you want to do is pass and get that credential, I understand, and that is cheating. I think it's cheating, but it is certainly out there. Do you think doing that you're going to be caught most of the time if you were told don't use ChatGPT?
I think so. If you just do it just to get something done and turn it in and you don't really check it, then you definitely will get caught.
I agree with that. If you don't check it, if you have 10 minutes left till the assignment's done, you haven't done the reading, and you ask it to spit something out, you'll be caught. Yeah, I mean, most of the time, if the professor's really reading the papers, because it's gonna do all the bad stuff. At a minimum, you'll get a failing grade. At a maximum, you'll be accused of cheating and plagiarism. But let's say that it's not that situation. You have the half hour like you did now, and you've been told to not use ChatGPT in class, but in a half hour, you only have a half hour left till it's due, and it's going to take you longer. So you do the half hour that you guys did. Do you think you'd be caught for that? You're saying yes, Sarah? What about them would make them easy to tell?
They use this facts that it's actually.
I hate to tell you, plenty of students use useless facts, but yeah, yes. So you things that's seemingly unrelated. Well, the difficulty is I was only half joking about plenty of students use useless facts. They do, and it's difficult to be sure about plagiarism or a use of AI. It's somewhat designed to not do that. Its combination of words. We'll talk in a few minutes about how it works. Its combination of words is to some extent unique. And in that regard, it's not plagiarism. But you copying it is plagiarism. It generated that. But it's tough to detect, and you'll have varying reactions from professors about it. Some are intent on hunting down, every use of it. They will probably come up with some false accusations, almost for sure, because student writing is robotic, a lot of it, and uses things that don't make the most logical sense. That doesn't mean it's a failing essay. It's an essay that needs improvement. So to accuse that student is difficult. If you are accused of plagiarism or of using ChatGPT or AI when you're not supposed to, and you didn't do it. Well, first of all, if you're accused of it and you did it, turn yourself in, confess. It's, trying to fight it, I think is a very bad idea. Say, I'm sorry, I didn't. I forgot the assignment. If that's a 0 for this, I apologize, but give me my 0 and I'll move on. You've learned. But if you didn't, there are lots of ways to fight it effectively. And it involves writing, emailing, using your writing skills, the things we're talking about in this class. Writing to the professor respectfully and explain to them what you did, asking maybe to get together with the professor. If you've got multiple versions of what you wrote that show over time, use a track changes. If something you're particularly nervous about, use track changes on your document and show them the version that shows the changes that you made and how they were made. And there's actually an article on D2L under my AI and ChatGPT section that describes if you're falsely accused of using AI and plagiarism, how to approach it. So Kelsey, you said yes.
Well, like you said, doesn't really make any like grammar errors, and unless you like write like that, you write perfectly, then maybe like.
Then maybe.
But if you don't write like that, then you're definitely gonna be able to tell the difference between your type of writing and then
Right.
something different.
So that's part of it. If all of a sudden, hey, you wrote in this class. Okay, so remember in this class you wrote What I'm Thinking, which I really wanted to read and I'm interested in, but also I'll be honest with you, it gives me a gauge of how you write. And so if that's what you wrote, and all of a sudden you're writing like Joan Didion, I'm going to question it. So yes, Cabria.
I feel like if you just ask it to like do like a prompt of something and you can like put your own words in it, maybe that can help, but I would rather write it myself.
Yeah, I'm not trying to discourage you from, I hope that's clear. I'm not trying to discourage you from yourself. It's more probing the question of, could you get it to write like you?
Yeah. A little probably, like if you just switch some words out or like a sentence out, but then like keep like some parts of it that they wrote.
Well, here's an interesting thing. And again, I'm not encouraging, I hope it's clear. I'm not encouraging guys to cheat. Rather, these things are instructive. If we have some time, I'll play you a little bit of a video about generating prompts. But one of the things, if you wanted it to write like you, put in some of your writing. Say, write like this. You could copy your What I'm Thinking essay in and say, this is the way I write. Please write like that. And it'll do it.
I was like talking to him about like the ChatGPT and he was like, yeah, no, you can like feed it your old essays and like teach it how to write like you. And then you just be like, all right, now write this prompt in my style.
You can have absolutely, or write like a 5th grader.
Yeah.
Or write like I'd explain it to my mom. Explain ChatGPT to an 80-year-old. Or someone over 60 like me. You could get it to do that. Or I've gotten it to rewrite Shakespeare's To Be or Not to Be soliloquy in pirate talk. So it can do that. Doesn't do a very to be yes, it does stupid stuff like that. It's genuinely not that creative. Although there are more creative forms of AI than ChatGPT that it's designed for, like image generators. I don't know, has anyone used the AI image generation?
I have, but it's not good most of the time.
Right.
Sometimes you can get something most of the time it's like once you notice like little errors, it becomes like
right.
parts of
But it's definitely going to get better. You're right. Excuse me. Right now, it's not very good, but it's like CGI in film, right?
Yeah.
At first it was really obvious.
Yeah.
And now Most films are done with CGI. So it's like that. So you can mold it and get it to do that. I don't know that you want to do that, but I would say this. One of my points I'm going to keep making is I really think it's beneficial for you to do your first draft. Just do it. There's an assignment coming up for this Thursday to do your first draft. Don't use AI for it. Yes, you are allowed to use AI for it. I'm discouraging you from using AI. If you want to try it, go ahead. I think it's not a great idea, but you could do it. But that being said, after you've done your first draft, to help you mold it and guide it of saying, my terminology I think is a little awkward. Can you make it smoother, but not sound overly professional or overly intellectual or whatever? Or put in your own writing and say, here's a good piece of my writing. Can you adapt it in this style? Now recognize, I'm sort of casually talking about all this, like, oh yeah, this is out there. It's staggering. I mean, it's, the sense of wonder and amazement shouldn't be lost here. Like that this is just something that, is natural. This is unnatural. This is crazy. So, the things we're talking about, don't think this is usual and natural. So anyway, so we're talking about how much work it is. The answer is, with a little bit of work, you're going to get crap. With a little more work, you're going to get a passable essay. And I was also talking a little bit about detection. So one of the things about it, it's actually very, very difficult to detect. As a professor, we have what's the name of it that we put things through that just to find plagiarism, and we have the software that we use to find plagiarism. That's very good at finding plagiarism where you simply have pulled out of the internet or from a paper that's available on the internet whole sections from it, or whole paragraphs, or even a sentence, and that is very good. And I use that not all the time, but if it's an essay sounds very different than someone's style, and I think I'll check that. In a handful of times I've had to accuse students of plagiarism. So that's a different sort of plagiarism. This plagiarism is very difficult to detect. It's almost designed to be undetectable. Maybe like with the development of AI and AI technology, the development of AI catching technology will become better. And there may be laws about the AI having to have some sort of imprint on it, electronic imprint that can be found. But whatever they find, there'll probably be people who find ways around it. So it is very difficult to find. It is very difficult to detect. And so we talked about the instance of your writing style has changed, and all of a sudden you're writing well. Well, I want you to write well in this class. That's my purpose. I want to see improvement. So if I'm going to be seeking out ways to accuse you of cheating, if I see you improving, I don't know, that's, not my purpose. And so, I think it's very difficult, and professors who do that, I think, are going to spend a lot of their time spinning their wheels and falsely accusing some students and tracking down others. Now, that being said, if you are accused of plagiarism, and if you are using ChatGPT or AI when you're not supposed to, and if you didn't, there are ways to defend yourself, and I strongly encourage you. If you did do it, I suggest confessing. Don't. The worst thing to do is to tell the professor they're an idiot. They're horrible. They're the most discriminatory person you ever met. They'll dig in and they'll find it. And this, the administration will be on their side. But so admit it if you did it. But if you didn't do it, there's actually among the things that I've got on D2L is an article about what to do if you're accused of plagiarism and you didn't. And it talks about things like writing to the professor, writing, respectfully, and explaining what you did. Ideally, having early drafts. So if you have some way of tracking changes, using track changes, show how you did that. So, but anyway, the point is that it's very difficult to detect. Some will try to do that, and there will be false accusations about it. And there are ways around it. So let's not talk about the essays generated. So in this class, I think there was one that would have failed, and there were a couple that were sort of middling, and then there was a fourth that was still middling, but not quite as middling as the other one, if I remember correctly. Anyone here for the one that failed? And now I hope everyone understands that wasn't your grade for the assignment. The grade was 100 for the assignment, and it was an important part of the assignment that some people did that. So thank you for doing it. But anyone in the group that failed? But let's call up the. So I have put, in case you haven't seen it, all of the essays online. So you can see this is on D2L. You can see everybody's essay both for this class and for my other class. I teach two classes, one 1102, you guys, and one 1101, which is the period after this. And so you can see both your essays and their essays. One thing that you'll find interesting, there was a group in that one that generated one that I say would have fooled me. Before we talk about that one, let's talk about ours, the ones in this class. So group 4, and I don't remember who was in group 4. I said you would the essay would have gotten a grade of 50, and it said that Why I Write was published in Slouching Toward Bethlehem, which is not true. Slouching Toward Bethlehem came out years after Why I Write was written. And it claimed that a central theme of Didion's essay is the writer's responsibility to tell the truth. And it backed that up with a quote that doesn't exist that said, I want to tell you something. I want to tell something to the person I was when I wrote that, which sounds like it could be Joan Didion, right? So anyone anyone in that group?
Yeah, we gave it a very rushed prompt, and we didn't come up with what we actually wanted it to write specifically until the very end, so we just kind of put the most basic prompt possible.
And then you sort of,
something out.
right. And you sort of ran out of time, probably.
Yeah, it's like, you have 5 minutes left. Yeah, you have to submit something.
Exactly. So we came with a basic prompt through it, and we were like, it looks all right.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely picture that happening, can't you? You wake up, oh shit, I got an essay due today. Half hour, got to do this. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend using it for that, because that's where you're going to end up. So it's good, you know. And now, after you guys saw this feedback, I mean, did you know that, you know, you probably didn't know about like slouching toward Bethlehem was later, because there's no way to know that from what we had studied. But like that quote, did you figure out? Oh, we missed that.
Yeah, like after we saw her, like
After submitted?
This was not, yeah, after we submitted it.
We did like everything incredibly light skin. We just like looked at the first couple like this and just went on.
Yeah. So I mean, that's good. I mean, that was an important part of this exercise. So thank you for doing that. And the exercise is designed in some respects to generate some of that. In fact, I think the overall results of this are pretty indicative of what the use of AI and ChatGPT can be. Out of the 8 essays, 2 would have failed, 5 were okay, passing. And someone made the comment, I don't remember if it was in this class or in the other class in the discussion post, that I think Dr. Weiss was fairly lenient in how he said he would have graded it. I wouldn't have graded it as well. Did anyone in here say, did you say, Janella? Thank you for making that comment. Yeah, and my reaction is, maybe I was, for a couple of reasons. One, the nature of this exercise. I wasn't trying to beat you over the head with AI, does a really bad job. And number 2, this is early in the semester. So we haven't yet been through the process of what I think it takes to generate a really good essay. So the fact that it's early in the semester, truthfully, your next essay comes in the Thursday, you may be surprised at how lenient I am about grading it. Especially because it's a first draft. Later during the semester, it'll get tougher. After we've talked about things like generating the first draft and how then you revise, what are the specific things you do when revising and editing. So if that essay had been turned in later in the semester, it would have done worse than it would do at this point. But it is true. The ones that I graded like 75 to 80, there were probably a couple that were more on the border of failing than I graded them as. But nevertheless, I do think it's a fair indication that you've got a couple that just were people ran out of time, whatever, and it generated something that clearly was failing. Most of it will generate something reasonably passable. And with at least a little bit of work, it'll do that. And then I was trying to be honest. I was trying to be honest with myself that had I read that, I wouldn't have known it was generated by AI. I might have suspected, but I'm not inclined to accuse. In any case, and I would have said this is a good essay with a personal voice. Did anyone in this class look at that essay or look at the feedback for the stuff from the other class? Let me show you that. Let me show you that essay. So that is English 1101 Group 2. So let's look them up. So let me get a volunteer to read a little bit of this.
Joanna Didion's essay, Why I Write, has profoundly shaped my understanding of the motivation behind writing, triggering a resonance with a personal experience that not only echoes her ideas, but also reinforces the potency of writing as a vehicle for self-discovery and community.
Okay, thank you. So before we move on, anything surprising about that?
Well, I guess it does kind of sound like somebody had to sat there and like I feel like they might have like used what AI gave them and like revised it because I don't feel like I ever use AI gave me something like that.
Yeah, no, there's no way you could get that initially with any prompt probably out of AI. So let's move on. I'll actually, Owen, I'm sorry, I'll pick on you since you're the actor. Go ahead, read.
Several years ago, I embarked on an audacious journey, a solitary backpacking expedition through a remote mountain range. The raw beauty of the rugged terrain, juxtaposed with the serene grandeur of captivating panoramas, ignited within me a profound desire to capture the essence of this experience. It was during this trip that I felt the urge to document my journey in a journal. Initially, I viewed the journal as a mere chronicle of my adventures, a way to capture the fleeting moments, sights, and sounds of the wilderness that surrounded me.
Thank you, Owen. Okay, what do you think? Interesting.
It's really descriptive, but also very personal.
Yeah, and if you forget about this being an exercise about ChatGPT as a professor, can I get that and accuse that student of using ChatGPT? No. As the days turned into nights and the pages of my journal began to fill, a transformation occurred. The act of inscribing my thoughts in the soft glow of a headlamp each night became more than just a recounting of events. And she goes on, or this group goes on. Didion's contemplation of the quest for a narrative also struck a poignant chord during my time in the mountains. Writing is the act of saying I, she astutely noted, of imposing oneself on other people. This realization became manifest as I composed my journal entries. Okay, maybe this did impact that person. That's strong. It's very difficult to say that. Now, I'm sorry that the people aren't here. I'll relay back to you. I don't know what exact prompts they did to generate that. But yes, they put in something about an experience. I think they came up with the idea of relating it to a camping experience and saying, can you write a story about relating it to a camping experience where you wrote, kept the journal. And I'll ask them, if they can regenerate their prompts or, and see it. So, again, it would be very difficult. In conclusion, Joan Didion's essay, Why I Write, casts a luminous light on the multidimensional nature of writing, a revelation that reverberates through my personal journey. And if the person had written, total crap before this and came up with these words, I might, accuse them and say, please explain to me how you wrote this, or, talk to me about it. In fact, that's probably would be my approach, would be, can we get together? And I'd have it up to the side, say, tell me about that, that camping trip. And see if I were inclined to accuse them. Truthfully, I'd more say, okay, let's be truthful to each other. I'll give you credit for very creatively using this. Please tell me how you did it. Probably. But the point is, and this was only in the same half hour you guys were given. In that half hour, they managed to get this. Would anyone disagree with the grade of 90 to 100 for this essay? For what you were given?
It's kind of creepy.
It's kind of creepy.
It's kind of creepy.
It's creepy that it can do that, you mean?
Yes, people that can write something that feels very personal, even though it's really computer generated.
Yeah. And my comment to them, in fact, let's see what I did tell them, because I've given you, I didn't give the detailed feedback. So each of you, I hope you can see. By the way, can everyone in the group see the feedback the detailed feedback that I gave your group? Okay, good. So grade 95 to 100. ChatGPT wrote the essay as someone who related Didion's essay to a specific camping trip he or she took, and the journal kept during the trip and how it changed the writer's life. I'll be honest, I was fooled. I'm anxious to discuss with this group how they generated the essay. Raises lots of questions. I went, beyond that in my detailed feedback to them and saying, look, I can't say I sanctioned this use of AI because you generated a fictional character for something that was intended to be your own personal observations. I said, but at the same time, I can't say that's completely wrong. That's a creative use of it. And for yourself, if you have an essay to write and you don't really quite relate to it, if you make up a character in your head and make up an experience you never had, and write a good essay based on it, you can do that. That could be good writing. So that's, creative. It's fictional. I'm not grading you on how much does this reflect your actual real life. I'm grading you on how do you convey a personal perspective on what's done. I don't know what's going on in your own life. I mean, I'd like you to, relate it to your own life. I think you'll get more out of it that way. But as a creative use of writing, I'm not sure. So I don't have a good answer to whether this is right or wrong. Anyone here have feelings about that? We'll talk in a little bit about, I feel phenomenally lucky that it happens to be that this experiment was run with Joan Didion's Why I Write, because I think it's absolutely the perfect essay for that. An essay about how writing is the act of saying I. And it's really funny because I've been using Joan Didion's essay along with George Orwell's essay now for a few years, but in the past, I've always focused on George Orwell, and Didion was almost an afterthought. And for this semester, I switched it around because people said, I've been getting feedback that people tended to like Didion better than Orwell. So it just happened to be, and this is the semester when ChatGPT came up, and I'm like, oh, let's do it for this. I think it's perfect because it raises the question of, is there an I in AI writing? Where is the I? And if writing is about, I, it's about you. It's about projecting your views of the world onto things and getting your point across. Does AI writing do that? And this essay does a good job of emphasizing that question, because the I in this is a fictional I. So now let's come to the guys or people who generated the essay that, as I said, fooled me. Let me first read my overall feedback, and then we'll talk to them. So group 2, grade 95 to 100. ChatGPT wrote the essay as someone who related Didion's essay to a specific camping trip he or she took, and the journal kept during that trip, and how it changed the writer's life. I'll be honest, I was fooled. This is me. I'm anxious to discuss with this group how they generate the essay. Raises lots of questions. So let's go down. That's group 2 in here. And if you go down in this document, you've got all the essays from my other class and this class here. So let's, can I, show of hands of who was in this group? Okay, will one of you read the first paragraph of the essay? A volunteer? Isaac, you?
Yeah, as the five I asked for talent, she understand the motivation behind my even the residents of the personal experience that their ideas can also reinforce the potency of writing vehicle and self-study.
Thank you, Isaac. So, hey, I don't know how many of you who weren't in that group hadn't seen that yet, but is that, do you expect that? This is my own personal experience. And it goes on. Several years ago, I embarked on an audacious journey, a solitary backpacking expedition through a remote mountain range. The raw beauty of the rugged terrain juxtaposed with serene grandeur of captivating panoramas ignited within me a profound desire to capture the essence of this experience. And it goes on to describe keeping a journal during that experience and how much that was inspired by and related to Joan Didion's writing So Didion's contemplation of the quest for a narrative also struck a poignant chord during my time in the mountains. Writing is the act of saying I, she astutely noted, of imposing oneself upon other people. This realization became manifest as I composed my journal entries. Those who weren't in this group, would you think this is generated by AI? No. If you're the professor, would you have accused them and said, hey, I know this is bullshit? And how would you grade it? What's that? It was a good essay or not? Yeah. Especially if you're allowed to use it and you're honest about how you used it. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm really interested. This wasn't my intent. It wasn't to make something up entirely. And I said in my feedback to you, by the way, can everyone see all the feedback? Everyone in the groups can see the feedback for their group. Okay. So I said in my detailed feedback to you, I don't know that I can sanction or approve of this as a use of it, but I also don't know that I can object to it because when you write, if you creatively make up a character and write about it for an essay like this, that's part of writing. It's creative writing. It's not exactly what was asked for, but I don't know what went on in your life. And if you effectively create a character that's you in a fictional sense and write about it, that could be effective writing. So I'm still pondering exactly what this means that you guys did this, but I'm interested in hearing how you did it. So how did you end up with this camping trip? Anyone in that group?
I just told it to, at first we just copied the prompt and wrote an essay, and I told it to rewrite this, but create a personal connection and relate it back to John Didion's why we wrote.
Okay.
Created that.
Oh, so you didn't tell it camping trip. You simply said make a personal connection. Wow. So that did everyone hear that? So the prompt wasn't even specifically related to a camping trip, which I think you could have told it that and probably would have come with that. But it was even more general than that. It was create a personal experience and relate it to Joan Didion. Thank you. Does that surprise anyone that it could do this? Yeah, David. Pretty surprising.
I didn't think it was able to make a personal.
Yeah.
And basically, like make something up so that
Convincingly. Yeah, no, it's and truthfully, I'm surprised hearing the prompt that we used. I thought what you guys used was perhaps more specific than that. But it can create things in different voices. And if you want it, for instance, to write like you, give it some samples of what you've written. Take, for instance, the essay that you wrote, just for starters in this class, What I'm Thinking. Put it in and say, write this now in this style. And it can do that. It can mimic you. Or write it as a fifth grader would write it, and it'll write that. Or write it as explaining this to a youngster or middle schooler. and it can write like that. So it is, I mean, some of this we talk about somewhat casually, but it's staggering that it could do that. So from that group, how did you guys feel about it when you were done? Jonathan had like that popped out.
I was a little surprised.
Yeah.
I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was gonna be that good.
You know it's good, but you didn't expect to get an A.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else from that? Did you agree? And Ariel, you were in the group too. It was surprising. Yeah. And I'm surprised to some extent as well. And I want to make the point, this isn't a class in using ChatGPT and AI to generate writing. It's not a class in AI, but it's out there. And I think it's important that you know about it, and you know about things like this to generate it. I don't recommend that, but if you're going to use it, and I don't just completely discourage you from using it either. If you're going to use it well, use it right. I'm not sure this is right, but like I said, I can't say it's completely wrong either. It achieved a purpose. I'd rather you had told it about yourself and said something, that you remotely related to it, say use this experience. Like I failed, my English class in 9th grade, and I realized what I didn't do. It'd make up a story about that. But the fictional thing, I'm not sure about. But I would say this: so it did that, but yet the majority of students in this class and in my other class concluded that, this thing is too dangerous. It generates too many bad things. I'm not going to use it. I don't like it. I'm assuming you were honest with me. You're not just bullshitting me. So maybe. So many did that, and sort of this assignment was somewhat designed to generate that. This is a misuse. The idea that you have a half hour left and you have to generate an essay is a misuse of ChatGPT, and you were just thrown into it. So that generated some bad stuff, but it generated this as well. So in one regard, this may encourage you to use it. On the other, the misquotes and the failing one may discourage you, and that's the nature of. So we had failing essays, we had mostly moderately passable essays, and we had one A essay. The ones that were moderately passable, but a little bit better than others, included specific details. The ones that were really generic just didn't, there was one that talked about the shimmer and focused on the element of shimmer, what that meant. And that's a little bit better. It still wasn't great because it didn't feel like a personal experience, but at least it emphasized something in the reading. I mean, I think I know the answer to this question. Did this exercise encourage or discourage your use of ChatGPT at school?
Discouraged mostly.
Discouraged, mostly discouraged. Yeah.
Never able to try to pay off mostly not mostly, but it's not really too reliable for school. But the only thing it would be more reliable for would be language arts or anything writing or history related. But besides that, those for math, for example, it's garbage.
And part of that is I mentioned, I talked about how the design of the exercise probably partially does that. It's a misuse of it. So it wasn't my intent to discourage use, but then again, I'm not trying to encourage use. I'm simply saying it's out there. How does it do what it does? I talked about that. It simply follows words. It's very good at putting words together. The words don't have to make lots of sense. Okay, so this is a very big experiment, as I mentioned, and I think this is important. Truthfully, I think this is important for all of education across all the United States. And there aren't that many people doing this and writing about this in a way. So with that in mind, I have put together a document called Notes on ChatGPT Experiment. It is on Google Docs, and I've made it available to you guys. And it includes my thoughts on the exercise, the details of the exercise itself, the assignment. So it has the instructions for the group exercise, my note on how I would have graded all the essays, my own observation in the chat in the discussion board, my policy for this class, which I recommend now, having done this, that you reread the policy on AI for this class. It includes all the essays generated, all 8 of them. It includes all your observations from your discussion posts in this document. And then I'm going to be adding observations to this. This document is out online. It's available to you. I've been talking about this to other professors. There's a group on Facebook. There's a group on Facebook about higher ed teachers who are work in writing and how we're dealing with AI. I'm getting a lot of feedback from them. And they've seen this. And I'm debating sending a link to the woman who writes for the Chronicle of Higher Education and has been covering AI for her to potentially write about it. And a couple of years ago, she wrote about stuff that I was doing in one of my classes about student disengagement. Now, there are no student names used in here. Anytime a name was there, I took it out. And I refer to simply class 1 and class 2 and group numbers. All that being said, is there anyone here, you can raise your hand or you can email me, who is uncomfortable with this information being shared potentially with the outside world? If I were to do that, I would first send a form out to you guys and ask for your permission to share this. And you can take a look at this document online and see what you think about what's there. And if there is anything that would make you uncomfortable. I don't think there's any personal disclosure. Or let me turn it around rather than anyone object. What do you think about that? How would you feel about that? If you saw our class's exercise written up in a national journal about education, good or bad? Good. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and you might find your discussion post being quoted in a national journal. I'm gonna think about that. It's certainly not nothing I'm doing right now, but when we're more done with this exercise, I'll see how useful it might be. But I'm getting a lot of feedback from the people in this group that, wow, this is really revolutionary and something we need to think about. So, but what we're doing genuinely is important from a national standpoint on how is this thing going to be taught. And as you know, in many classes, it's completely prohibited. I just don't think that's the right response. I'm also not sure that this is the right answer. We'll figure that out as we go. And I'm a little concerned that if it feels like I'm endorsing that you use this. Those of you that concluded, I don't want to use this, excellent, great, please don't. You do not have to use it ever again in this class. You can forget it exists. That's fine. You can't completely forget it in this because we're actually going to be studying it. We're going to be reading articles about it. And in the end, if you want to write an essay, possibly a final project about why this is awful and why it should be prohibited at schools, especially elementary schools and middle schools, great, let's go at it. But you don't have to use it to generate that essay or do research or do anything. You don't have to. But it's out there and I allow you to use it as long as you tell me how you used it, honestly. As I mentioned, I think the Joan Didion essay is perfect for this exercise. And think about the things she says. In many ways, writing is the act of saying I, of imposing oneself on other people, of saying, listen to me, see it my way, change your mind. And I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see, and what it means. And then she concludes it with, let me tell you one thing about why writers write. had I known the answer to any of these questions, she's asking questions about who the narrator is and what's going to happen, I would never have needed to write a novel. So she's discovering all this as she's writing. So is there an I in AI writing? To her, the act of writing is all about I. And does AI aid or diminish the ability to find out what you're thinking? It doesn't matter if it does or doesn't do that. It made me think about her essay differently. And anybody here want to address any of those questions or?
It does. The minute you really find out what you think, it literally is not thinking for you, but it's kind of just giving you, it's prompting you to think like what's on the screen. So it's like, I guess it depends on what the assignment is. If it's just like not something else supposed to be personal, then it would matter. But if it was something else supposed to be personal, then yeah.
So for instance, let's take, when we say not something personal, let's take, I don't know, you have to write about Frederick Douglass. We're not doing Frederick. Yeah, we're doing Frederick Douglass in this class. You have to write about Frederick Douglass and his impact on the abolitionist movement and how effective or not narrative life of Frederick Douglass was. Are you saying that because it's not so personal?
But that is kind of personal too.
Excellent. That's what I love. I love that you said that.
It's personal, I guess. No, I guess that is kind of like personal.
Yeah.
Kind of fair.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. It is kind of personal. And truthfully, I think almost any writing should be kind of personal. More than kind of personal, it should absolutely be personal. Whether it's about what you're thinking or it's about Frederick Douglass's impact on abolition. That's what you're doing with your writing. I think you're doing what she's describing here. You're saying, see it my way. You're saying, this is what I think. And that's effective writing. Thank you you gave me like the perfect lesson. I think that's good writing. That's great writing. Great writing conveys what you are thinking. Poor writing doesn't do that. But despite how perfect the sentences are and what beautiful words are used, if it's not getting across a point of view, that's bad writing. And so I think I genuinely, this exercise in ChatGPT and AI in general has made me look at when she makes that statement. In many ways, writing is the act of saying I, of imposing oneself upon other people, saying, listen to me, see it my way, change your mind. Remember, she goes on after that to say, in fact, it's the act of a bully, that it's imposing your view on the senses of the reader. And I've always been a little mixed on that, but I think she's doing a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think she's right. I think that's what good writing is imposing your views on others. They can always put the piece of writing down and ignore it. So in that regard, I don't think it's like a bully. But I do think that's what good writing is. And that's probably the biggest thing about AI that's very concerning, that human beings are going to start using this to do writing for them and lose that personal voice. Now, there's lots of writing. The average memo to your coworkers, the average response to an email, the average manual produced or instructions, when you call the insurance company and get a response, that's a machine, probably doesn't need much more than a machine. So I can understand that. But the sort of writing you're looking for in college, and the sort of writing you're looking to do that really matters to you, I think AI, I hope and think it'll never get there. But it can fake it, like in the camping trip. It can pretend. So these are big, difficult questions. I don't know the answer to them. At the end, she says, let me tell you one thing about why writers write. Had I known the answer to any of these questions, that's questions like who's the narrator in this story, what's going to happen in this story. If she had known the answer to any of these questions, I would never have needed to write a novel. So when she sits down to write, she doesn't know where it's going. She's finding it out as she's going. And if you're going to ask a machine to do that for you, you'll completely miss that. So, I mean, I think this essay just captures so much about writing and about the purpose of writing. And even I had only partially understood that before this. So my questions about that, is there an I? Like she says, writing is the act of saying I. Is there an I in AI writing? Is there a person behind it? You guys, Jonathan, you guys generated a fake person.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a, that's an I, that's a voice behind it?
I guess, but not like a real eye.
Yeah, it's a fake I, although authors do make up fictional characters, obviously. So but that's still their perspective, isn't it? They're interpreting a character, and here, no one in your group had a camping trip or cared about a camping trip. The machine came up with a camping trip. It just worked. So what's that? It's like by the way, that's Susu said it's like programming code. One thing that AI and ChatGPT is excellent at is programming, because it's repetitive, it's pure, just what follows from other things. And in terms of concern for jobs that AI may take over, programming is way up in the list. But it's a significant concern. So yeah, it's like programming. Does AI aid or diminish your ability to find out what you're thinking? Diminish. Tyler, you say diminish? Yeah. So what's that? It depends. So what would be a use where it would help you?
Well, for example, probably use that made for his teaching. His students are allowed to use ChatGPT for learnings.
Yeah.
But there's a limit. He sets a boundary for them to not go over it.
Yeah.
And still help with it.
Yeah, no, so points out, Tyler says it limits, which it does misused. Used appropriately, I think it can help. I'll be honest with you. I used it to help me design this exercise. Now, I didn't say, please design an exercise where students use ChatGPT and write about why I write. I had written it up and I said, suggest elements that might make it more interactive, that help them do it. I picked up some of them and I rejected others. But it gave me things to think about. And I asked it about, there's a teaching concept called the flipped classroom, where the idea of a flipped classroom is, unlike regular classrooms where you do your work outside of class and come back and listen to a lecture, you do the work in the classroom. And so I said to it, how can we turn this into a flipped classroom exercise? And it was able to tell me stuff about that, some of which I used and some of which I didn't. So you can help it. It's got to be done with knowledge. It's got to be done over time. I'll talk in a minute about prompt generation. So does it aid or diminish? One thing, oh yes, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
I feel like it's a good if you don't know where to start, I feel like you should honestly read it on your own, and then if you don't know how to word something, just use it as a format and then edit it to your own capability and your thoughts and opinions. And so you'll just give you kind of you enter in the flow, but they just kind of give you okay, here's what each paragraph needs to kind of be.
Right.
So I feel like that would be the only time that I would actually use it. If I didn't know where to start and I just needed an idea of how I wanted it to look, and then I take that into consideration.
Would you, before asking for an outline, give it your ideas about what you were thinking about?
Yeah, I would tell it what to write, and then if I don't know how to word something, I'd maybe look and see if I can be oh, I like what they said here, and then I decided.
Right. No, and that, so on the use of AI form that you're going to fill out for assignments, one of the things to check is I use it to prepare an outline. So yeah, I mean it's possible. I would caution you, it seems tempting to do that before you even put the ideas in. So to start with, and you can use it for brainstorming too. You can ask it, just give me 10 ideas of how I could address this essay, and think about that, and then do your own draft. Even if it's real. Remember what did Ernest Hemingway say about first drafts? they're shit. The first draft of anything is shit. So generate that shit, and put it in there, and then do that outlining thing. Put your random thoughts into it, and ask it, to help you with that. So it can help you with that. So it can help. Misused, it's really going to impede. And it's going to impede your learning. It's going to impede your ability to write. I mean, it's, I made the analogy earlier in this class that writing is like exercise. You only get better at it by doing it. You don't get better by talking about doing sit-ups. It's you got to actually do it. That's why we're going to write a lot in this class. Someone asked the question, are we going to write a lot? I think Tola, maybe it was you, like our first class, someone over here asked. And I said, well, this is what we're going to do. And they said, yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, you're going to write a lot, but that's how you get better at it. And most of it you won't really be graded on. It's just, did you do it? And something like the assignment coming up as a first draft, you're not going to be graded on, is it perfect? It's really important you do it. And if you're using this to prevent you from doing that, just like exercise, if you use a machine to report how many sit-ups and push-ups you did, you're not going to get any healthier. It's not going to help. Yes, sir.
Advisors on grant. I have a lot of problems with grant.
I think using it to advise on the grammar mistakes. I more than encourage you to do that. How many people use Grammarly? How many people use Grammarly? Check out Grammarly too, which is a form of AI. So that's something that you can put your essays into, or you're writing into, or type it in there as you're doing it, and it will tell you about ways to improve it and corrections. Now I'm going to do that in this class. So I don't know why your screen just went away. In this class, I'm going to advise you, but I can't catch everything. So Grammarly is good. Also, make sure you're using the spelling and grammar check all the time. So those little squiggly lines, pay attention to. But I would tell you this: those of you who are sitting here and thinking I'm really bad at grammar, everybody's bad at grammar. I'm bad at grammar. I'd much rather have a heartfelt essay that gets your point across, that had grammar we can correct or improve, than have a grammatically perfect essay that says nothing. That's bad writing. Yes, David.
Like this technical cycle is, and this is probably and both to the right. The thing is, what is the training on
David said he took his discussion post, which had some misspellings and not good grammar, put it in, said, please correct this, and it came back with something that says the same thing, but it's great. I would recommend, rather than doing that, because your learning is limited in that, is ask it what was wrong with this, and it'll explain it to you, and then have it generated or regenerate it yourself. So use what's there to help you. Ask it what was wrong, what could be improved. Right, use it as a tool, use it as a teacher, use it as a tutor. There's, among the things that are available online, is an essay by Ethan Mollick, who teaches at the Wharton School. He does a lot of stuff with AI, and there's an essay about the different roles that AI can play for students and teachers. Things like a tutor, a collaborator, a peer, someone who peer review. Tell it it's going to be that, and it will be that. So we're going to be doing a lot. Like I said, this is not a class about AI, and I'm not encouraging you to use AI, but we are going to be doing a lot of reading about AI. It's a topic we're studying, and we're studying in order to write about it. So there are a lot of articles and essays and links to resources on D2L under artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. So a lot of resources. I recommend you glimpse through them. And there are four in particular I'll highlight right now. One is this essay we're going to be required to read. It's excellent. Will ChatGPT kill the student essay? Universities aren't ready for the answer. And that discusses what I was saying earlier about how, okay, if students can produce essays that pass, and with flying colors your class, maybe you need to reevaluate what your essay is, and make it something that is more meaningful so they don't do that. I'm striving to do that in this class, asking for personal observations, even though you can make up personal observations. But it's up to me to prove to you that what I believe is true, that what you're going to learn in here is going to be more important to your career, no matter what you're going to do, than what you're studying in for that career. If you're going to be an accountant, this course is more important to you than accounting. If you're going to be a computer programmer, in terms of advancing in that, communication and writing is going to be extremely important. So I'm trying to do that. That article talks about that. There's an article, Beyond the Matrix Theory of the Mind, and it's also available as a podcast, that talks about how if we put ourselves years back and looked at the invention of the internet, and we're told where we are today and what it is, that we have this thing that has a device that glows on our nightstand, never goes away, and we're forced to always look at it, and it creates hatred. You hate your fellow man because all it does, it tells you the things that you agree with that disagrees with them, and it's horrible for mental health. For young teenagers, it's going to drive them insane. We might do some things to change that, and here we are with this new invention, AI, and what are we going to do to make it that it's the positives that come out of it and not the negatives? It's a really good article. There's an article from the Chronicle of Higher Education, which I mentioned is one of the leading publications for higher ed, and it's differing views on the impact of AI and ChatGPT on higher education. And lastly, there's a series of videos by, I mentioned Ethan Mollick, that are called Practical AI for Instructors and Students. So for instance, there's a video about coming up with good prompts to help you, like David, coming up with good prompts to help you improve your grammar would be something that which you can design. You could say to ChatGPT, please act as my grammar instructor, and I'm going to type this in and explain to me what I got wrong, which would be a great prompt, and you can do it. So there's a video about designing good prompts in this series of 5 different videos. So the point is, there's a lot available on D2L, and I recommend that you take a look through those. A number of them will be reading on their own, but if there's anything there that sounds like it interests you, go for that, because that's what we're trying to do in this class. You write about and learn about what interests you. Okay, so that's all about the assignment for, the exercise we did last time. As I said, this is not a class in ChatGPT or AI, and I'm not trying to encourage you to use it. If you concluded and never want to use it, great, don't use it. Please don't. But it's out there, and I want you to know about it. In this class, you're allowed to use it as long as you tell me how you used it, honestly. Okay, so if you have an assignment for this Thursday. It's to write an essay called Why I Write, your own version of Why I Write, but this is going to be a first draft. And what this is, what I mean by why I write, it's a personal statement of why do you write. I want you to include some connection to Joan Didion there. And I have a number of prompts, I'm going to talk about those on the next slide, that can help you make some connection to Didion. But it's mostly your personal observation of why do you write. This is a first draft. It needs to be 250 to 500 words. You can do more than 5. There's almost never an absolute limit to the number of words. If you want to do 1,000 words, you can do 1,000 words. But my gauge is around 250 to 500 is reasonable. It's due this Thursday at 9 a.m. This counts as 15% of the shorter assignments section of the grades. Shorter assignments is 40% of the grade for the semester. So this is 6% of your total grade for the class. So fairly significant. This is a first draft. You're going to have a chance to revise and expand it after getting feedback from me. And this Friday, I'm gonna be having online Zoom one-on-one sessions. If you want to set up a writing session, completely optional. What I will guarantee you is if you set up a writing session with me, I will get you feedback before that, so that we could talk about it. So you'll turn this in Thursday. We'll have a writing session Friday. Yes, sir.
So, since it's graded, is it graded after we revise it or just the first draft?
Both are going to be graded. So you're going to be graded on the first draft, and there's a rubric for that. And then you're going to be graded on the final one. And the final one will look more for grammar, and will look for, did you take into account my feedback on it? So this is 2 assignments. So this is just the first of the 2 assignments. Good question. So, but you'll get feedback from me, and then you will do a revised, expanded version. The objectives of this are your own personal disclosure, and exploration of your own purpose in writing. Demonstrate some that you engage critically with Joan Didion, as we've been talking about it, and as many of your discussion posts did. Being a first draft, format, style, grammar aren't that important. Those count for 5%. And truthfully, it's mostly, I'm going to ask you to submit this in general MLA format, double spaced. You don't need footnotes or citations. Double spaced, header, and I've got the sample page to show you what it looks like. So it's basically the way it looks. But David, you don't need to worry about your grammar in this. In fact, you might be better off, I'll give you feedback on your grammar, just doing it the way you do it. Now for this, use of AI is permitted, but discouraged. I think using AI for a first draft is a misuse of AI. I think it'll limit your thinking. It's not right. It's unfortunate, but this is the first opportunity. If you want to do it, go ahead and do it. Whether you use it or not, you need to submit the form. And on the form, there's a checkbox to say I didn't use AI at all. I assume most of you will do that, but don't feel, like I'm going to count it against you if you don't. I'd be interested why you did that and what came out of it. So making a connection to Joan Didion, I've got 4 different prompts that can help you do that. 1, do you write to discover what you're thinking? So the basic quote that we've used for her is, does that apply to you? Can you think of that applying to you? 2, think about things you've written that really matter to you, that have made a difference. Maybe you're proud of, or maybe it's things that you've written to yourself or friends that really made a difference in your life. Does anything in the Didion essay apply to those? Is there something that she said that relates to that? 3, Joan Didion asserts, writing is the act of saying I. Do you think that applies to your writing, or do you maybe disagree with her? That's not it. Do you push your own personal identity down when you write, maybe? Or maybe it does. Maybe that's exactly what you're doing when you write a journal to yourself. 4, do you think you write only for practical reasons? All you do is send texts and emails, and that's the only, or when you're required to for school, and that's the only time you've ever written. And if that's the case, does anything she says still apply to those forms of writing? Just the basic writing you do. I've said in this class that people say that people don't write anymore, and kids don't write. And I don't think that's true at all. People are writing more than they ever have in human civilization, because for the first time, conversations are being held in writing in real time. And I'm talking about texting. That is a form of writing. So if you want to write about your texting, go ahead. If that's what you think of as your writing, if that is your writing, and how does that relate to Joan Didion? If none of those appeal to you, then ask and answer your own question. Because if you don't like the question, what should you do? Answer another one. We're getting there. So if you don't like the question, answer another one. And in doing that, I encourage you, be creative. Vary from the topic. Come up with something related in your mind to it. What does this bring to mind to you? Remember, Joan Didion was writing about George Orwell's essay, but she just mentioned him in the first paragraph and then went off completely on her own tangent. So maybe that's what this does for you. But do something to demonstrate that you read and considered Didion. Engage with her critically. Give it your own reading, your own interpretation. Why did it inspire you to do whatever you're going to write about? Both ask and answer your own question. And if you've got some idea of what you'd like to write about for this, for whatever reason, and you're unsure how you can connect it to this assignment, email me and we'll figure out a way together to get there. Because I can connect almost anything to anything else. Remember, I wrote, for a business class, I wrote a paper on Shakespeare. Yes.
I have a question about this. Is the assignment going to be based on the library, or is it about only one?
It's your own why you write. Good question, David. So David asked, is it about Joan Didion's why I write? It's based on that. Is it your own why you write? It's principally your own why I write. It's you writing why you write. But in doing that, is there anything about her essay that impacts what you think about that? Yes, Susan.
So
I love that. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Susu. So Susu asked, can you link it to George Orwell? Absolutely. In fact, if you want to ignore Diddy and go for Orwell, go for it. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate we've missed Orwell. One of the big things in his essay is he describes 4 motivations for writing. And they're very different from Joan Didion's. So that would make a great topic of, do any of those apply to you or appeal to you? There's one particular that appeals to me. Yeah, good. Yes, please do. So yes, you can absolutely do that. And you don't even need to address Joan Didion if you don't want to. You could say, or if you want to say Joan Didion based it on George Orwell, and that's what I wanted to write about what he does. So yeah, and I do recommend you read George Orwell's essay. I had an assignment where we were going to actually sit here and read it in class. I had done excerpts from it, but then I decided that's not the best use of class time. So it's unfortunate that we are so it's unfortunate that we missed it, but I recommend it. And if you want to do a final project about Orwell and Didion, you can definitely do that, and we can talk about it. So Orwell can come back, and Orwell's there in the background. I think it's a wonderful essay. I personally prefer Orwell to Didion, but many of my students have seemed to prefer Didion. Good question. Any other questions about the exercise due this Thursday? Yes, Tyler.
Reference them at all, like directly say June Didion or anything like that, or can you just have parallels to kind of how she wrote in the ideas?
That's a good question. Do you need to actually reference her, or can you sort of just imitate her in a way? If you did that, I guess somewhere you need to make it apparent to me that you read it and thought about it. So the easiest way to do that is to explicitly say what you're doing. But I could see an essay that didn't do that more creatively. It could work. It could work. I mean, in a way, I think Joan Didion's essay is impacted by. So one of George Orwell's essay. George Orwell's 4 reasons for writing is sheer egoism. It's like the sound of a baby crying. And I compare that to her thing about it's the act of saying I, of imposing your views on others. And I think she's reacting to that, even though she didn't quote it. So that's a little bit like what you're saying, that it's there in the background, but she doesn't explicitly say, oh, instead of sheer egoism, this is my way of saying it. But that's the way I interpret it. This is the main purpose of this is you saying why you write. And if you never mentioned Didion in this first draft, I'll probably question it. I may or may not take off points for it. If I did take off points and your reaction is he missed it, he didn't get what I was doing here, tell me, because I'd be happy to reconsider it. Any other questions? Well, those are all really good questions. If you've got something you want to write about that this inspires you to write, email me and let's talk about it. Any questions about the assignment for Thursday? Okay, thank you for the discussion. I'll see you guys on Thursday.